Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at investing in the economy. One investment goal, of course, is always to try to leave something for your children and your grandchildren if it's possible. So, Bob, that's a great idea if you can do it. But at what point do you start making those kinds of plans, and how do you do it?
Well, once you've met all your family obligations and you're on your own, if you will, you and your spouse, and you're living from your portfolio and your other streams of income like Social Security, pensions, whatever, then you have to take a look at whether you're going to outlive your assets or your assets are going to outlive you. Or as I used to say in my classes, are you going to run out of breath or money first? So if you're going to run out of breath before you run out of money, and you have two vultures sitting on your tombstone waiting to pick your bones, the federal estate tax collector, and Little Bird is the state tax collector, you may want to try to save some of those taxes by gifting earlier than your death and pass it on to subsequent generations. Because the federal estate tax, if you qualify, if you're over a certain amount, you're going to pay 40% in federal tax. Even the state death tax ranges from 4.5% when you leave it to your children and grandchildren to 15% when you leave it to your financial advisor. Meaning a non-relative. All right. So it's still not but you're going to give 12.5% when you leave it to your brother. That's not a small thing. So if you can save 4.5%, 12.5%, 15%, 40% in taxes, you ought to do that planning. But it's individualized. There's not a rule of thumb.
Yeah, and Stacy, I'll add that, as we work with clients, we're really kind of doing that planning as early. We have those discussions as early as, having initial meetings with clients is, what type of legacy do they want to leave, and working it into the retirement plan to see, can they gift to their children? Because, we're talking a lot about stocks, and Bob kind of alluded to this. There's very good reason as to why, if you have a highly appreciated asset or stock with a low basis, that might be a great item to get out of your net worth and pass that on to your kids or grandkids that are potentially in a lower tax bracket when they sell that security. So there are a lot of reasons of why gifting makes sense, but, start those discussions as early as possible.
And I'll add to Shana's excellent point, your favorite charity too.
Charity, absolutely.
Appreciated securities to charity, not cash.
I was just going to, you brought this up. So it's not just cash that you can pass on to somebody. You can pass on some of your holdings, right?
And therefore you pass on the tax consequences. So if you give it to your grandchildren that are not in a tax bracket and it's long-term capital gains, they may pay nothing on it because they're in a zero capital gains rate. The charity is always in a zero tax rate.
There's numerous ways to pass money forward. You can do it through charitable remainder trust, where you earmark a charity with a document. You take the income, and if you're passing, that the principal goes to that charity, whatever it is, and you get the deduction when you fund the trust, but you still get the income from the money. But there's all sorts of ways to do that, and what you need to do is sit down and do the math, and then figure out what, if anything, you should be doing. Most people don't have beyond the state tax a significant tax burden under the current law, which I think has an expiration date, by the way.
Yes.
And but under the current law, if it is allowed to expire, I doubt that it'll be allowed to expire, but who knows at this political time we're in today. But right now, if you don't have, I think it's $11.5 million each, you don't have a federal estate tax problem. And although there are people that have $22-ish million, couples, there aren't that many of them.
And that's going to be cut drastically in the 25.
If it's not extended.
Yeah, and even looking back to history, I mean, sometimes that estate tax exemption has been 1 million. I mean, it's subject to change throughout your whole life. That's why this planning is really important.
But if you're a couple, that's really 2 million. It's 1 million each.
Right.
Well, that's very interesting. I guess I go back to then how do you make a plan if you don't know what the future is as far as these kind of things
You
are?
start with yourself. This is where you sit down with your financial advisor, and all of us do it. Sit down with your financial advisor and work through the projected schedules. You say, well, the future, as you said, I don't know what the future is going to bring. Well, we're going to use the historic norms, rates of return, inflation, all of that. And then we're going to find out if you run out of money or breath and when that's going to occur. So you find out you have a surplus and you're able to gift a certain amount during your lifetime. That's when you can start to do that. And you can't be wrong in that situation, because if you know via your projections you're not going to run out of money and you're benefiting your children, grandchildren, they're able to buy a house now they couldn't buy, for example, or the charity gets to put, whatever, more programs into place. How can that be wrong? As long as you're not shortchanging yourself. It doesn't require you to predict the future to make good, intelligent financial moves like that.
And if you do it, if you're only dealing with your children and you're trying to figure out what that a marital exemption or whatever they call that, 11 million, 1 million, whatever it turns out to be, if it changes, change the document.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you're still alive, you can change.
Remember, Frank's talking about Big Bird when he's using those. Frank's talking about Big Bird vulture when he uses those big numbers. Little Bird's going to bite you with a smaller beak, but he's going to bite everybody.
If it's $1, they're taking 45 cents at least.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that, by the way, it's going to go up. When the exemption goes down, it's programmed for the rate to go back up to 45%. So you have an imperative to start planning in advance. You can't do it as the clock switches.
All right, we are out of time for this segment. There's a lot more to discuss on how to manage your portfolio, and we will do that in the upcoming sessions. I want to again thank Shana and Kim and Bob and Frank for joining me, and I hope that you join us for our next edition of Around the Table with Stacy Smith.